1 John chapter 5 verse 19. We know that we are of God, and the whole world lies in the power of the evil one. The purpose of this video is to expose America for what it truly is. A satanic nation. We are Americans ourselves, we love our country, but we love the truth more. Over the course of this video we will expose America's true satanic foundation, history, and future. Please watch with an open mind, and pray that God will reveal the truth to you. Isaiah chapter 14 verses 12-15. How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning! How you are cut down to the ground, you who weaken the nations! For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation on the farthest sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, I will be like the Most High. Yet you shall be brought down to Sheol, to the lowest depths of the pit. Before we go any further, it's important to have a basic understanding of Freemasonry. In a nutshell, Freemasonry is a secret society, or as they call it, a society with secrets. Regardless of how you want to say it, the secret behind Freemasonry is the worship of Lucifer. Most Freemasons aren't even aware that they worship Lucifer. Most Freemasons don't make it past the 3rd degree, which is a Master Mason. Albert Pike, a 33rd degree Freemason, admits in his book Morals and Dogma of Freemasonry, that the higher level Masons are to keep the lower level Freemasons dumbed down and ignorant. It's not until a Freemason reaches the 32nd degree, when it's finally revealed to him that the light that he seeks, is the light of Lucifer. Freemasons go through initiation rituals, where they seek light, and swear not to reveal any secrets of Freemasonry. It is through the higher levels in which the modern-day Illuminati operates. Most of the founding fathers, presidents, and politicians have been, and still are, Freemasons. This is how they carry out Satan's plan for the New World Order. Our government-issued textbooks tell us that Christopher Columbus discovered America in 1492. The dictionary says to discover means to learn something unknown, but the tens of millions of indigenous Indians would certainly contest Columbus' discovery of anything. Perhaps the occult meaning of discovery coincides with Columbus' occult knowledge of exactly where he was going. Perhaps the word discover means just that, to take the lid off something that has been covered up. The Phoenicians were not confined to the Mediterranean and the Middle East. They landed in Britain around 3000 BC, and unmistakable Phoenician artifacts have been found in Brazil, as well as possible Egyptian remains in the Grand Canyon in America. The Phoenicians landed in the Americas thousands of years before the manufactured photo opportunity better known as the Journey of Christopher Columbus. The reason that the native legends of the Americas speak of tall white gods coming from the sea bringing advanced knowledge is because that is precisely what happened, if you forget the gods bit. When critics objected, saying Columbus' mission was impossible, he often countered those objections saying he might discover some very beneficial island or continent about 750 leagues to the west. At this point the ships would be able to restock on food supplies and continue on towards Asia. Then lo and behold, Columbus discovered a very beneficial continent precisely 750 leagues to the west. In Scotland's Knights Templar Rosslyn Chapel, there are clear depictions of corn and aloe cactus found on the archways and ceiling. These plants were officially discovered in America and first brought to Europe in the 16th century. How then did the Masons building Rosslyn Chapel, completed in 1486, know about these plants at least 6 years before Columbus set sail? The official story that Christopher Columbus discovered the Americas is ludicrous. A few miles from Edinburgh in Scotland today still stands Rosslyn Chapel, that holy grail of the Brotherhood elite. It was built in the shape of a Templar cross by the St. Clair Sinclair family and is a mass of esoteric symbolism. The foundations were laid in 1446 and it was completed in the 1480s. How remarkable then that the stonework at Rosslyn includes depictions of sweet corn and cacti which were only found in America, and Christopher Columbus did not discover the continent until 1492. How could this be? There is, in fact, no mystery. Christopher Columbus was not even nearly the first white person to land in the Americas. The Phoenicians, Norse, Irish, Welsh, Bretons, Basques and Portuguese all sailed to America before him, and so did Prince Henry Sinclair of Rosslyn, as documented in a rare book by Frederick I. Pohl called Prince Henry Sinclair's Voyage to the New World 1398. Sinclair made the journey with another Brotherhood bloodline, the Zano family, one of the most prominent black nobility families in Venice. Sinclair and Antonio Zano landed in what we call Newfoundland and went ashore in Nova Scotia, New Scotland in 1398. The Brotherhood had known about the Americas for thousands of years, and Christopher Columbus was used to make the official discovery so that the occupation of the Americas could begin. Columbus' supporters were European royalty and the Templars. His father-in-law was a former Templar knight, and Catherine de' Medici of the Illuminati bloodline along with others financed his voyage. Columbus' 3 ships sailed under the Templars' Red Cross flag, used today by the Red Cross and Switzerland. The royals also sent out fleets of conquistadors and swashbuckling pirates flying the Skull and Bones flag, their orders to rape, kill, and pillage all they could from the New World. The Skull and Bones cross used by the secret society comes from the pirates' skull and crossbones. They weren't just a bunch of swashbucklers like you've seen in the movies. No, these were agents sent onto the high seas by the British royal family to colonize the Americas. Matthew chapter 7 verse 15, "Beware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves." Christopher Columbus posed as a Christian by pretending to be Catholic, then waged a Holocaust against the Native Americans. There is nothing Christian about the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is actually paganism that was Christianized by Constantine. They just hide behind the cross and the Bible, because Satan hates these truths. Hence Christopher Columbus's affiliation with the Knights Templars. Christopher Columbus announced a proclamation in Spanish to the Native Americans which they had no hope of understanding. They had no hope of understanding the death sentence they were being read, and it went something like this. "We ask and require you to acknowledge the Church as the ruler and superior of the whole world, and the high priest called Pope, and in his name the King of Spain as lords of this land. If you submit, we shall receive you in all love and charity, and shall leave you, your wives and children and your lands free without servitude. But if you do not submit, we shall powerfully enter into your country and shall make war against you. We shall take you and your wives and your children and shall make slaves of them, and we shall take away your goods and shall do you all the harm and damage we can." Does this sound like something a true Christian would say? No. That's satanic. Most Americans scoff at the mention of conspiracy, but their country was created by Freemasonry and they don't have a clue. Freemasons drafted the Constitution and signed the Declaration of Independence. The Indians who dumped the tea in the harbor were Masons. So was Paul Revere and his Minutemen, George Washington and most of his generals. The Marquis de Lafayette was shunned until he joined the Masons. Most United States presidents have been Freemasons. Freemasonry is the Church of Lucifer masquerading as a fraternal mystical philanthropic order. It fronts for Illuminati, Masonic and Kabbalist Jewish central bankers who started the U.S. as a vehicle to advance their New World Order. In the words of Masonic elder Manly P. Hall, we must also perfect the plan of the ages, setting up here the machinery for a world brotherhood of nations and races. The Freemasons provided Americans with ideals, civil liberties, equal opportunity and no taxation without representation, which still are valid. But they were enticements designed to win power. As you might have noticed, these promises were not intended to be kept. Most historians won't tell you this. In Upton Sinclair's words, it is difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding it. But there was one historian who did reveal the truth. Bernard Fay, who lived from 1893 to 1978, was a Harvard-educated Frenchman. He is considered an anti-Mason because his 1935 book, Revolution and Freemasonry 1680–1800, is one of the very few to reveal the extent of Masonic participation in the US and French revolutions. He had access to Masonic archives in the US and Europe. His book is actually a sympathetic portrayal of Freemasonry with no references to its occult nature. However, as a Vichy Frenchman, he subsequently helped the Nazis identify Masons during World War II. He was imprisoned after the war but pardoned in 1952 by Charles de Gaulle. Fay explains that in the 1770s, the U.S. consisted of 13 isolated colonies with different governments, religious affiliations, customs, racial profiles, and social and political structures. There were intense rivalries and long-standing antagonisms. A letter took 3 weeks to get from Georgia to Massachusetts. Masonry alone undertook to lay the foundation for national unity in America because as a secret society it could spread throughout the colonies and work steadily and silently. It created in a limited but very prominent class of people a feeling of American unity without which there would have been no United States. In 1760, there was no town, big or small, where Masonry had not spun its web. Everywhere it was preaching fraternity and unity. Benjamin Franklin, who was the Grand Master of a French lodge, raised millions of francs crucial to financing George Washington's army. He was the first to submit a concrete plan for military collaboration and political federation to a Congress representing all colonies. He established a chain of Masonic newspapers in all of the colonies. You can imagine where he found the money. Fay says George Washington and his ragtag army kept the spirit of independence alive. He organized many military lodges and personally participated in their activities. On December 27, 1778, he led a parade after Philadelphia was recaptured. Isaiah 29:15. Woe unto them that seek deep to hide their counsel from the Lord, and their works are in the dark, and they say, Who seeth us? And who knoweth us? His sword at his side, in full Masonic attire, and adorned with all the jewels and insignia of the Brotherhood, Washington marched at the head of a solemn procession of 300 brethren through the streets of Philadelphia to Christ Church, where a Masonic divine service was held. This was the greatest Masonic parade that had ever been seen in the New World. All the staff officers Washington trusted were Masons, and all the leading generals of the Army were Masons: Alexander Hamilton, John Marshall, James Madison, General Greene, General Lee, General Sullivan, Lord Stirling, the two Putnams, General Steuben, Montgomery, Jackson, Gist, Henry Knox and Ethan Allen were Masons. They all gathered around their master Mason Washington, and they all met at the Temple of Virtue, a rude structure forming an oblong square 40 by 60 feet, 1 story in height, a single entrance which was flanked by 2 pillars. The atmosphere which surrounded Washington was Masonic, and it may be said that the framework of his mind was Masonic. Imagine if Washington had shown the same devotion to Christianity. Fay points to a curious degree of coordination between Masons in the U.S. and British armies. It seems even likely that the unforgettable and mysterious laxness of certain English military campaigns in America, particularly those of the Howe brothers, was deliberate and due to the Masonic desire of the English general to reach a peaceful settlement. It is pertinent to recall the confession of General Cornwallis when he surrendered to General Washington at Yorktown October 19, 1781. Jonathan Williams recorded in his Legions of Satan, 1781, that Cornwallis revealed to Washington that a holy war will now begin on America, and when it is ended America will be supposedly the citadel of freedom, but her millions will unknowingly be loyal subjects to the Crown. The Crown is the Illuminati that is shareholders of the Bank of England. Cornwallis went on to explain what would seem a contradiction. Your churches will be used to teach the Jews religion, and in less than 200 years, the whole nation will be working for divine world government. The government that they believe to be divine will be the British Empire. All religions will be permeated with Judaism without even being noticed by the masses, and they will all be under the invisible all-seeing eye of the grand architect of Freemasonry. In a 1956 speech, Senator Joseph McCarthy reflected on these words. Cornwallis well knew that his military defeat was only the beginning of world catastrophe that would be universal, and that unrest would continue until mind control could be accomplished through a false religion. What he predicted has come to pass. A brief sketch of American religious history, and we have seen Masonry infused into every church in America with their veiled phallic religion. We can't see the Judeo-Masonic conspiracy because we are not accustomed to thinking in terms of hundreds of years. But the Illuminati bankers had been plotting the new order of the ages featured on the US dollar along with the uncapped Masonic pyramid for thousands of years. We may have the pleasure and pain of witnessing their design come to fruition. As we do, it is worth remembering that Americans, in fact all peoples, have allowed themselves to be duped. Our role is analogous with that of the French nobles who collaborated in the French Revolution and then were slaughtered. Fay writes all these nobles did not hesitate to side with the Revolutionary Party, even though it was to cost them their rank, their estates and their lives. In the words of a speaker at a secret B'nai B'rith meeting in Paris in 1936. Yet it remains our secret that those Gentiles who betrayed their own and most precious interests, by joining us in our plot, should never know that these associations are of our creation and that they serve our purpose. One of the many triumphs of our Freemasonry is that those Gentiles who become members of our lodges, should never suspect that we are using them to build their own jails, upon whose terraces we shall erect the throne of our universal King of Israel. And should never know that we are commanding them to forge the chains of their own servility to our future King of the world. Revelation chapter 13 verses 16 through 18. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand, or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. And his number is 666. History tells us that America gained its independence on July 4, 1776. The same year Adam Weishaupt established the Bavarian Illuminati in Bavaria, Germany. If you look at the bottom of the pyramid on the back of a $1 bill, you will see the Roman numbers that equal 1776. The Illuminati and the occult uses numerology because they believe in and worship the power that is contained in numbers. If you take the numeric value of each Roman numeral and add them up, you will see that 1776 equals 666. The Statue of Liberty in the New York Harbor was presented in 1884 as a gift from the French Grand Orient Temple Masons to the Masons of America in celebration of the centenary of the First Masonic Republic. She is holding the Masonic torch of enlightenment. also referred to back in the 1700s by the Illuminati Masons as the Flaming Torch of Reason. The torch represents the light of Lucifer. The Statue of Liberty's official title is, Liberty Enlightening the World. Illuminati means to bear light. One way to symbolize this is by carrying a torch. A torch sits on top of the Statue of Liberty, on top of JFK's grave, and on top of the tunnel where Princess Diana was killed. Best-selling author, Robert Balville. The cornerstone for the Statue of Liberty was placed in a solemn ceremony in 1884 organized by the Masonic Lodges of New York. The Statue of Liberty, which was designed by the French sculptor Bartholdi and actually built by the French engineer, Gustave Eiffel, both well-known Freemasons, was not originally a Statue of Liberty at all, but first planned by Bartholdi for the opening of the Suez Canal in Egypt in. Bartholdi, like many French Freemasons of his time, was deeply steeped in Egyptian rituals, and it has often been said that he conceived the original statue as an effigy of the goddess Isis, and only later converted it to a Statue of Liberty for New York Harbor when it was rejected for the Suez Canal. The goddess Isis is known by many names, including Juno. Interestingly, the goddess Juno made an appearance on a Vatican coin in 1963. Notice her torch. During the period of the alleged Freemason Roncailles pontificate, the curiously named John XXIII, architect of the disastrous Vatican II Frederick August Bartholdi, the sculpture of the Statue of Liberty, on a Masonic card. Notice the Masonic compass and square. From another article by Balville. The torch analogy is very interesting. The original statue of Bartholdi, destined first for port said at the mouth of the Suez Canal, was also to bear a torch intended to symbolize the Orient showing the way. The Grand Orient, of course, is the name of the French Masonic Mother Lodge, and to which Bartholdi belonged. There is another similar torch that played a strange role in the French Revolution, but of which I will reveal later in my forthcoming book Talisman. It still is to be seen in the skyline of Paris today. People today do not realize the power of such symbolism, and how they can be used with devastating effect on the minds of the unsuspecting masses. And this is worrying. The SS Nazi movement made prolific use of all these symbol games, and wreaked havoc in the world. The truth about the Statue of Liberty is that it's a representation of Lucifer, or the light bearer. It was previously used as a lighthouse. It is also modeled after a pagan goddess, the Roman goddess Juno, and also after the Egyptian goddess Isis, who is depicted as a robed woman holding aloft a torch. The book that the statue carries in one arm is not the Bible nor the Book of Freedom. It's the pagan Book of Knowledge and contains the Roman numerals 1776. If you watch the last part of this video, then you already know 1776 is a numerology equation that equals 6, 6, 6. There are 4 pillars on each side of the base. 4 times 4 equals 16. 1 plus 6 equals 7. 7 is a sacred number to the Masons. There are 7 projections on her crown. On her crown there are 25 windows. 2 plus 5 equals 7. Once again we see the number 7. The statue is 150.1 feet high. 1 plus 5 plus 0 plus 1 equals 7. This has been done on purpose. This is spiritual wickedness in high places. Ephesians 6:12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. As you can see on the back of the US $1 bill, there is a pyramid with the all-seeing eye of Lucifer, with the message, Novus Ordo Seclorum, which is Latin for New Order of the Ages or New World Order. You are about to learn that the US government is linked to Satanism, Lucifer worship, and Roman Catholicism being the mother of them all, as they are all abominations to the Lord, and Roman Catholicism is the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. You have already learned that the U.S. was founded by a secret satanic society brotherhood. The street design in Washington, D.C., has been laid out in such a manner that certain luciferic symbols are depicted by the streets, cul-de-sacs and rotaries. This design was created in 1791, a few years after Freemasonry assumed the leadership of the New World Order, in 1782. Deuteronomy chapter 18 verses 10 through 12. There shall not be found among you anyone that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire, or that useth divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. For all that do these things are an abomination unto the Lord, and because of these abominations the Lord thy God doth drive them out from before thee. In Europe, occult leaders were told by their familiar spirits as early as the 1740s that the new American continent was to be established as a new Atlantis, and its destiny was to assume the global leadership of the drive to the New World Order. The United States of America was chosen to lead the world into this kingdom of Antichrist from the beginning. The capital is Washington, D.C. In 1791, Pierre Charles Lenfeny, the designer, who was a Freemason, laid out governmental center of Washington, D.C. He planned more than just streets, roads, and buildings. He had certain occultic magical symbols in the layout of U.S. governmental center. When these symbols are united they become one large luciferic, or occultic, symbol. The upper 4 points of the goat head represent the 4 elements of the world: fire, water, earth, and air. The bottom 5th point represents the spirit of Lucifer, all of which are represented in Washington, D.C., the United States capital. Many people have natural tendencies to want to disbelieve unpleasant or frightening truths. Occultists take advantage of this. Audacity, always audacity, is a saying the masters of the Illuminati have always had. Something shocking and so far out and considered to be impossible is audacity. People naturally feel that their leaders generally have their best interest at heart, whether they be in a democracy or a government of royalty. Leaders may commit errors and may be incompetent. Some people may take solace in their belief that most leaders have their country's best interests at heart, most of the time. The average citizen in any given country could not conceive that their leaders may consistently have evil in their hearts. And this evil would be towards the very people they are leading. Since 1776, our leadership, U.S. government has been consistently moving us toward the Satanic New World Order. This leadership has always been working through secret societies, misleading us as to their true intentions. This is why our study today is so critical. It demonstrates, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that our leadership has knowingly and consistently been pursuing a hidden agenda which, when fully carried out, will mean the destruction of our nation, the U.S. as we know it today, in the beginning of the biblical Great Tribulation. Our leaders are currently calling this system the New World Order. In the street layout of Washington, D.C., the 5th point is the White House, a symbol placement which represents the intention that the spirit and the mind of Lucifer will be permanently residing in the White House. This map isn't all that accurate as far as the streets are concerned, but it will have to do. There is a 666 evident in the most important top 3 circles of the goat head: DuPont Circle, Scott Circle, and Logan Circle. Each of these streets has 6 major streets coming into them from all angles of the circle. This type of encoding is so typical of the occultist. Everything was deliberately planned to stamp the power of Freemasonry and the symbols of its plans for America indelibly upon Government Center in Washington, D.C. The combination of the goat head of Mendes, devil's pentagram, and the practical existence of the number 666 within the 3 upper points of the pentagram unmistakably shows that Lucifer is planned to be the ultimate master of governmental center.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order, where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind, peace and security, freedom, and the rule of law. Such is a world worthy of our struggle and worthy of our children's future.
From 1945 and the end of the war through 1989 and the end of the Cold War, we had a worldview. Republican and Democratic presidents alike, from Harry Truman to George Bush, stood for freedom and stood for certain propositions that would make America strong and healthy and grow the middle class and shrink poverty and stand against communism. And after 1989, President Bush said, and it's a phrase that I often use myself, that we needed a new world order, and instead it looks like we got a lot of disorder. We still, and after 9/11, we've been more sensitive to this.
What do you think the most important thing is for Barack Obama? Obviously, you're here to talk about the anniversary for U.S.-China diplomatic relations, but if you had to say this is going to be the country or the conflict or the place that will define the Obama administration, what would it be?
The president-elect is coming into office at a moment when there are upheavals in many parts of the world simultaneously. You have India, Pakistan, you have the jihadist movement. So he can't really say there is one problem that is the most important one. But he can give a new impetus to American foreign policy, partly because the reception of him is so extraordinary around the world. I think his task will be to develop an overall strategy for America in this period when really a new world order can be created. It's a great opportunity. It isn't just a crisis.
The New World Order is one world government having a one world ruler, which is the Antichrist. What was once considered just another paranoid delusional conspiracy theory is now an accepted fact. The rapid implementation of the New World Order's one world government, one world ruler is happening as you watch this. New World Order is a term used to describe the uniting of the world's superpowers to secure and maintain global peace. World leaders are excited at the prospects for peace, and there has been much talk about entering a new era and about the establishment of a new world order. Revelation chapter 13 verses 1 and 2. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority. The book of Revelation was written in approximately 96 AD, approximately 700 years after the book of Daniel. However, this passage in Revelation 13 uses the same symbols as the prophecy found in Daniel 7. Daniel 7 mentions 4 beasts, while in Revelation 13 there is only one beast. Beasts symbolize nations, and in this prophecy we see multiple nations joined together into one great government. Consider, since its formation in 1945, the United Nations has exercised increasing control over world politics. Furthermore, it has repeatedly made decisions favoring the communist world, and has voted and spoken regularly against capitalism and democracy. The United Nations has been instrumental in establishing and increasing the powers of the World Court. Furthermore, the Commission on Global Governance has called for a global tax as well as a standing UN army. Add to this military-minded mix the European Union, and you have a volatile one-world government that most likely will be directed by the most powerful military-industrial complex known today, the United States government. Mikhail Gorbachev was the first world leader to come out publicly with talk of a new world order, and he did so nearly 2 years before George Bush caught the vision. In his historic address to the United Nations on December 7, 1988, the Soviet Prime Minister made this dogmatic and even prophetic statement: further global progress is now possible only through a quest for universal consensus in the movement towards a new world order. just before leaving for Helsinki, Finland, early in September 1990 to discuss the Persian Gulf crisis at his summit meeting with Soviet President Gorbachev. President George Bush expressed the hope that the foundation for the New World Order would be laid in Helsinki and that it would be established under the United Nations. At the news conference with Gorbachev following their historic meeting, President Bush declared optimistically, if the nations of the world, acting together, continue as they have been, we will set in place the cornerstone of an international order more peaceful than any that we have known. George Bush had been a good and faithful servant of the Brotherhood and, as no one before him, had made the One World agenda his main focus. Then in 1993, the New World Order was established as a legitimate national agenda by a socialist Democrat, Bill Clinton. Globalists saw this as democracy's finest hour. Through manipulation, the democratic system installed a socialist, New Age, One World leader with the charismatic albeit Arkansas appeal of John F. Kennedy to do their bidding. During Clinton's reign, New World Order socialists publicly came out of the closet in the U.S. House of Representatives. The powerful and popular lobby called the Progressive Caucus now began openly espousing the principles of socialism and have signed on to the agenda of the Democratic Socialists of America. Bill Clinton's favorite answer to all questions was government. Got a problem? Bill Clinton's new government program can fix it. Lost your job? Sign up for an employee retraining program. Feeling a little under the weather? A visit to your regional health alliance will shape you up. Having difficulty raising your children? Join our village, because it takes more than a family to raise children. Originally created to defend and protect, our government was now being asked to provide. Today, many Americans think the government must be the answer to all societal problems. And as the problems grow, so will the public's dependency, as will the government's control over people's lives and their minds. We are redefining in practical terms the immutable ideals that have guided us from the beginning. President Bill Clinton. Traditionally, Democrats have stood for big government, far-reaching federally controlled and federally funded programs and taxation at levels to match. One has to only scan through a few of Clinton's policies in economic, spending, and tax strategy to see that sovereignty and personal freedoms were the items actually targeted for reduction. In the simplest of terms, the sum of Bill Clinton's administration amounted to a federal government takeover of the management of American business, health care, education and the American family. Clinton's actions demonstrated that he envisioned much more than mere renewal or reform. He wanted to create an entirely new society controlled by a massive government. The New World Order is here, today, not someplace far off in the future. It has been a long time in the making, its pieces fitting into place from divergent realms. It is not some prophetically speculative or futuristic fairy tale, but a real-world reality. Gears and levers of history have been adjusted, readjusted, and recently finely tuned, as the global-scale game of screw the little guy has been tenaciously played, with mega-powers, trillions in currency, and global assets in mind-boggling proportions shifting hands, a game with very real winners and losers. It is a dangerous and risky undertaking, for they are vastly outnumbered. Secrecy of their true agenda is critical. The USA way of bringing the unwary cattle into slaughter is create a new globalist government initiative dubbed Homeland Security and have renewed criminal government intrusion into the private lives of Americans once used by Richard Nixon in his war on anti-war protester, environmentalists, and civil rights activists. Following every contrived crisis in America, the response is always the same, to erode more liberties in exchange for the promise that it will never happen again. And the result is, it continues to happen again and again, only American citizens once again end up with less freedom. We heard the same argument following the rash of hijackings during the 1970s and following the crash of Btw I and bombing of Pan Am 103. The result was that 4 airplanes could be hijacked simultaneously and used to attack America's financial center and our nation's capital. We heard the argument following the bombing in Oklahoma City. The result was the total destruction of the World Trade Center. globalists everywhere are celebrating the attack on America because their goals are being accomplished. Their desire to instill fear into the hearts of Americans is being accomplished. Since 9/11, many Americans now fear flying and are willing to exchange their freedom for the false feeling of given at airport boarding gates. Our RFID chips are coming soon and will be accepted with open arms by Americans that have fallen into the globalist trap. Here's just one example out of many of what the U.S. government has planned for its citizens. Detention camps for U.S. citizens. General Ashcroft's New World Order Vision, USA style. Under the U.S. Justice Department's new definition of enemy combatant, which won the enthusiastic approval of the President and Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld, anyone defined as an enemy combatant, which includes any American citizens, can be held indefinitely by the government, without charges, a hearing, or a lawyer. In short, incommunicado, you disappear into the system. Attorney General John Ashcroft's announced desire for detention camps for U.S. citizens he deems to be enemy combatants has moved him from merely being a political embarrassment to being a constitutional menace. But, he's just falling in step with the rest of the world's politicians as they build the New World Order. The mark of the beast is on its way. Revelation chapter 13 verses 16 and 17. And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand, or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Think it won't happen? You'd better wake up. Try buying or selling a major item today without using ID. Try leaving the country on vacation or simply because you're fed up with the way your country is being run without at least one internationally recognized form of ID. Do you use a driver's license, social security number, or passport? Well, hang on for the ride. You are soon going to be issued a national ID and then soon after that, a RFID chip. Palm Beach-based Apply Digital Solutions unveiled the very chip immediately after the 9/11 tragedy. Similar to PET identification implant chips, the human implant Very chip is a syringe-injectable radio-frequency identification microchip that can be read from a few feet away by either a handheld scanner or by the implantee walking through a portal scanner. Information can be wirelessly written to the chip, which contains a unique 10-digit identification number. In the post-9/11 security environment, the idea of a syringe-injectable device gives the national ID card concept a whole new dimension. The Very chip human implant tracking technology goes far beyond use for local security measures such as airport boarding areas or courthouses. The Very chip consists of a miniature sensor device, designed to be implanted just under the skin, that captures and wirelessly transmits the wearer's personal file info, including nationality, race, arrest and legal records, political and religious affiliation, and whether the individual is considered a national or international threat. Along with this very detailed and virtually unlimited data file, the chip will send vital body function data, such as body temperature or pulse, to internet-integrated ground stations. In addition, the antenna receives information regarding the location of the individual from the GPS satellite. All three sets of data, personal records, medical information, and location, are then wirelessly transmitted to the ground station and made available on web-enabled desktop, laptop or wireless devices anywhere in the world. Please do your own research about the mark of the beast. In the wake of the globalist-inspired attack on America, we keep hearing politicians saying we must do what needs to be done so that it never happens again. No, we don't need to ensure it never happens again, we need to get at the root of the problem and why we allowed it to happen at all. Americans should look inward and ask why our country can support desperates throughout the world in exchange for oil, and wonder why the victims in those regions consider us the enemy. While Americans were freely giving up many of their constitutional rights in exchange for so-called security and now needing a scapegoat to rationalize their loss, President Bush moved to the next stage of the Illuminati's agenda. According to an article in the Sunday Herald, President Bush and his cabinet were planning a premeditated attack on Iraq to secure regime change even before he took power in January 2001. The blueprint for the creation of a global Pax Americana was drawn up for Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, Paul Wolfowitz, and others. The document, entitled Rebuilding America's Defenses Strategies, Forces and Resources for a New Century, was written in September 2000 by the neoconservative think tank Project for the New American Century. The plan shows Bush's cabinet intended to take military control of the Gulf region whether or not Saddam Hussein was in power. It says the United States has for decades sought to play a more permanent role in Gulf regional security. While the unresolved conflict with Iraq provides the immediate justification, the need for a substantial American force presence in the Gulf transcends the issue of the regime of Saddam Hussein. Whipping up fear into Americans once again, President Bush and Tony Blair invaded Iraq under the guise of eliminating weapons of mass destruction. While none were found, both continued their charge that WMD existed with the fervor that would make Mohammed Saeed al-Saif proud. Despite widespread suspicion that the world's financial system is controlled by occult secret societies, this conspiracy theory is difficult to prove. The idea that secret societies are running the world is well established. For example, the Bilderberg Group is well documented as an elite society of the world's top politicians and businessmen who meet in secret outside the democratic arena, but the public does not know what is discussed or decided at Bilderberg meetings. Nevertheless, perhaps we can provide some insight into the spiritual beliefs held by the men who control the world's economy, by investigating how the financial system was established, and examining the relationship between finance and religion. The men who control the global financial system certainly do not share the same beliefs as those who follow the major monotheistic religions, Judaism or Christianity. According to the Jewish Torah and the Christian Bible, charging interest usury on a loan is strictly forbidden by God. In the New Testament of the Bible, Christians are specifically instructed to lend, expecting nothing in return. Thus, in Christian doctrine, it is right to lend money to those in need but wrong for the lender to seek profit from the loan. In the scriptures, repossessing property secured on a loan is also directly against God's commandments, especially when someone's only source of shelter is pawned. Apparently, God's original intention was that people should lend to each other out of kindness, but not for greed or profit. Exodus 22:25. If thou lend money to any of my people that is poor by thee, thou shalt not be to him as an usurer, neither shalt thou lay upon him usury. Yet the law in many countries permits lenders to charge interest on debts, and law enforcement agencies actively assist lenders in recovering interest owed. The modern legal system also enables moneylenders to repossess people's property, for instance somebody's home, if they are unable to repay a loan within the agreed time limit. Mortgage lenders can legally take people's property, even if it is their only refuge and they have already paid many times the true market value of the property including interest. In a display of inexplicable hypocrisy, the same law courts which uphold and enforce usury and repossession also require people to swear oaths on the holy books in which God directly forbids these activities. If you thought you were living in a society based on Christian principles, then think again. We all live under the new secular order Novus Ordo Secularum now, and this is just the beginning. We strongly recommend further research in order to better understand this important and interesting chapter of human history, because it has exerted a major influence on the development of contemporary civilization. The repercussions of these events reverberate strongly in world events to this day, and perhaps more deeply than most people appreciate. We must warn you though, there are some rather kooky websites out there that bundle up New World Order research with UFO and New Age quantum leap garbage. Be prepared to wade through and ignore many of them. In closing, as the 20th century idols of atheism, humanism and communism are falling worldwide, a spiritual vacuum is left that must be filled. In the resulting contest for the souls and minds of mankind, the Christian Church faces formidable opponents in globalists, socialists, New Age religion, Islam, occult religions, and Satanism. When facing this opposition, recall what Jesus warned us would happen. Matthew chapter 24 verses 10 through 14. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall rise, and shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations. And then shall the end come. No longer are we only threatened from without by a group of hardline communists, we are now threatened from within, by a group of intelligent, well-dressed liberals who over the coming years intend to convince America and the nations of the world that the only way to lasting world peace is the establishment of a new world order. While it is nearly impossible to accurately trace the interlocking agendas of these organizations, the supernatural dimension is the one that gives the puzzle meaning. How else can you explain a master plan that has existed for hundreds of years? The end-time plan of one world government ruled by the Antichrist is not something that would happen overnight and or could remain completely hidden from the worldview. It has been going on throughout history, and will come to fruition as God's holy word has stated that it will. Here is fact according to God's word. There will be a one world government. There will be a one world ruler. The people of this entire planet will be controlled by the one world ruler. The one world ruler in power at the time of God's choosing will be the biblical Antichrist. The people of the entire world will be required to pledge their allegiance to worship the Antichrist. Those that recognize the Antichrist for who he really is and do not pledge allegiance to him will be persecuted even unto death. Those that do worship the Antichrist and accept his mark in their forehead or palm will be condemned to eternal punishment by God himself. Christ Jesus will return physically to this earth and destroy the Antichrist and all of his followers. Will you recognize the Antichrist when he comes into power? Will you have the courage even unto death to refuse to accept the mark of the beast? We are living in the end times. The last chapters of Revelation is unfolding right before our very eyes, and America is a huge part of Satan's plan. If you haven't done so yet, repent, be baptized and accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and personal Savior. It's the only way to eternal life, and the only way to defeat the Antichrist and the New World Order. It doesn't matter how many guns you have, or how much food you have stocked up, those things will not save you for what lies ahead for America. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Please subscribe to the channel, and like us, and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We need all the support we can get. Remember, Jesus saves. God bless.